Okay, now you've tried it, your game out, you've played around with it, it's still kind of loose in the edges, and now it's time to get really structured. Now you're going to be mechanizing and creating the real fine-tuned engine of the game. So now it's the time for the most analytical parts of you to get into action. And now those of you who are good at finding flaws and errors and loopholes and you really have to take the floor. You have to, in order to really get your mechanics of the game in order, you should formulate your rules and get them written down at this stage. And as you are formulating them, it's really important that you write it out, because sometimes when you write something, you find out that it can actually be interpreted in many different ways, and that it'll make you see some of the possible flaws in your game as you write them. And as you're reading what you've written, you should analyze and look for some of the things that I've written here on this slide. First of all, does your game really have different kind of winning strategies? And that means, are there perhaps some loopholes, a strategy that wins every time? That'll be a major flaw in your game. If you've made a game where playing in one style that wins every time, then you have a problem that you should try to fix and make the game more interesting, and that you can follow different paths to victory. Also, a flaw that very often happens if you have a multiplayer game with a lot of sides competing against each other is that as the players see who's leading the game, who's ahead, who's closest to winning, they can gang up upon the leader and attack him or her, so that he or she is not in the lead anymore. And that could be a very fun part of a game, but it's generally called politics in a game, and it can make a skill irrelevant, so it only becomes a matter of talking about who's ahead and beating the leader back down. So you should think about how much will people gang up on the leader, and is that an aspect of the game. Also, you should be thinking about downtime, and that's the time that you're waiting on other players. It's good that there is a little bit of downtime in your game where you can relax and have a drink and watch whatever others are doing. But some games will, as you get to this point, you will see that you have a lot of downtime, that sometime one player will spend a lot of time thinking about what to do, and all the other players will become very bored. So think about how you can minimize that and make something interesting for everybody to do during the game. And also a thing that creates a lot of downtime is player elimination. Perhaps you've been creating some rules where a player can be completely removed from the game, losing all of his or her pawns and parts or money or whatever, so he or she cannot win anymore and has nothing to do. And that's also generally considered a flaw in the game, because then I'm completely out of the game and can just watch, and that's perhaps not fun either. Though there's one thing to say for player elimination, that is that if I'm lacking behind in the game, I don't have a bigger chance to win anymore as the others, then it's actually more frustrating to have to play and have no chance of winning. So what you should be thinking about in essence is that every player should have a chance to win at all stages during the game. So you have to think about if one player gets very much ahead, what can we do to make it more interesting for the rest of the players to be still engaged in the end game, the last parts of the game. And that's what we could call the end game excitement. And one thing, of course, as you are trying to fix these things and thinking them really through to the bottom, is that all players will be very interested in or motivated by the game being fair. A board game has to be fair for each party. Of course, you should be rewarded by being more intelligent or more skilled at whatever skill the game is about. But it'll be a poor game if the starting position for one player or another at completely random is much worse than the other players. And one thing about fairness that's also very important is that the game shouldn't tempt anybody to cheat inside the game. Of course, people won't come into a game saying, "Now I'm going to cheat," but depending on how the game is constructed, it can be more or less tempting to cheat. And what is the real problem about this is that as I'm playing, I shouldn't be concerned about another playing, perhaps he's cheating or not. the game should really make it hard to cheat, so that I don't have to suspect my co-players of cheating, because that'll be a stress element that will deprive you of fun. So when I'm exchanging money in the bank or whatever, because I have to cash in something, it should be out in the open, so that everybody can see that I'm exchanging these points. That's something that a lot of people will be concerned about. And another thing is replayability. You should consider, okay, how is this game to play as we're playing it the first time? But a core element of every game is that how good is it to play again? And that's called replayability by some people. Is it fun also the second time, the third time, the 10th time? Is there always something that will challenge me as I get back to this game? And that's a very hard thing to achieve. And generally, the more skill the game rewards, the more it rewards that you become more skilled in the game, figuring out all the combinations or strategies and such. It gains more replayability. But you should also know that the more the game rewards skill, the more it will be difficult for a skilled player to find a new player or to have fun playing with somebody who's new in the game, because the skilled player will win every time. And that's where you could add some more luck, and that'll even things out. So it'll be fun for both sides playing when the skilled player has to play again against a novice. So these are all issues that are important, and they can be many of them can be summed up with the game balance. Something that the game designers talk a lot about. Is the game balanced? Is it interesting to go in many different directions as you play along? A game that makes you go in only one direction, for example, a very simple game. Roll a die and move, and whoever gets first across the finishing line wins. That will be completely at luck, and there's only one strategy, and that's rolling the die. So that won't keep people interested very long. These are all issues to consider at this stage. If you have a strong theme for your game, let's say it's a pirate game, then you should also look for things that people will expect because it's a pirate game. Let's say you control a pirate ship, then people will expect that they are allowed to bury their treasure on an island, or they expect to board other ships. If they can't do this in the game, they will become disappointed, because the theme kind of it makes you expect that you can do these kinds of things. And of course, when you're doing them, they should be somewhat similar to how it would play out in real life. But of course, it still is a game. But sometimes these things can become very awkward, because they haven't been thought out beforehand. Okay, so these are all things to consider as you are making your mechanics. And the key issues again is what is exactly allowed by the rules, what is exactly forbidden, and which effects does it have, and you should really think ahead here on what players will be doing, and you should think about, does that create a hole, a flaw in the game? Can you break the game? Are there which strategies are rewarded? Are some of them better than the others? How can we make amends for that, so that many different ways to approach the game will be interesting, and that will make it interesting for many different kinds of people. Yeah. And the time to move on is when you have the rules really fleshed out. They should be written. You should have considered how does these rules all affect each other.